All right, good morning, Veritas. Good morning, everybody. If you would, find your way to a seat. Good morning and welcome. Well, if we were to go back in time, a couple thousand years, this would be the Sunday that history remembers as Palm Sunday. So Jesus would be making his arrival and his entrance into Jerusalem, and it would be to cheers and things like John 12 said, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And so it would appear to be this time of celebration, but the Bible also says that on Palm Sunday, as Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, he wept, and he had appreciation for what was going to happen. And so this is good for us as we start to think about celebrating now Palm Sunday, but we're headed towards already Good Friday in 5 days, and Jesus knew that. He knew that those that were celebrating and welcoming him in were going to be despising and rejecting him just 5 days later on Good Friday. And he had hope because he knew then he could see beyond that and say, man, Resurrection Sunday is coming. So here's what we want to do this week. Starting today, we want to have a day of worship as we start to think about those rhythms. And then this Friday, we want to invite everybody back. And we would encourage you to bring friends and family. So this Friday from 6:30 to 7:30, this is the first time we're going to do this as a church family. We're going to gather around Good Friday. And it's going to be a little different than maybe what our typical service feels like, just so you're ready when you come. It'll be a little more somber, and it's going to be reflective because it's going to be thinking about Good Friday. So it'll be a shorter service, probably even a little less than an hour or so, and we're just going to gather and have our hearts around that time of Good Friday. We'll pray, we'll have time of reflection, and then we'll leave this place, and then we get to come back on Resurrection Sunday. And we're going to have two services at 9 and 10:30 because that truly is a day of celebration, right? That'll be the next part in that rhythm and in those seasons this week. So we want you to come back. So 9 and 10:30, we want you to join us then after Good Friday. There won't be any childcare at 9, so if that influences your decision on which one to come to, we'd encourage some folks to come out to 9 o'clock. 10:30, we'll have our normal kids services and everything there for you. But come out on Resurrection Sunday. Bring family, bring friends, bring your neighbors. They're going to hear the story and the good news and the delight of Jesus on that Resurrection Sunday. So would you guys stand with me now, and let's start to worship the Lord together.
Well, good morning, Veritas. A lot of you probably haven't met me. So if I haven't met you, my name is Drake. I come from Iowa City, and it's a joy to be here in Iowa City. I'm the youth pastor, so I get to hang out with middle schoolers, high schoolers all the time. Full of energy, full of chaos. It's amazing, okay? But I have the joy this morning of wrapping up your series in the book of Isaiah, okay? So you guys have been working your way through Isaiah for a good couple of months now. And this morning we find ourselves in Isaiah 66. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and open to that. But before I get into it, I want to start off with a question. And that is, have you ever tried to be really impressive at something and it just didn't work out? Okay? Anything come to mind? I have, okay? Here's one story that comes to mind for me. So this past winter, me, my two brother-in-laws, and my father-in-law decided we're gonna go to the Black Hills to go skiing. Here's the little thing about me. I've only skied a couple times in my life. The rest of them have skied many times, okay? So I'm trying to keep up with the pack. And it's a couple trips down the mountain that my brother-in-law, Travis, says, hey, just like imagine you're like racing the Olympics. I'm like, okay, got it. I can do that, okay? So I'm going down this next hill, and guys, I'm crushing it, okay? I'm flying. I feel like I'm going for gold on this thing, but then as I'm kind of carving back and forth, I look down, and there's kind of this family just parked right in the middle of the hill, okay? And I notice them, I see them, and so I start veering to the right, but randomly, without looking back, the mom also just starts going straight right. Okay? So I'm cutting to the right. She's also going right. And what this leads to is me skidding on my skis. And guys, I took her out pretty good. All right? Like this was like sliding into home plate, taking out the catcher, full yard sale, actually 2-for-1 special. Okay? All of our stuff everywhere. And since she's not here, I would like to inform you that it was 100% her fault. But here's how I felt immediately after that. I was frustrated, right? I'm going for gold in that moment, and this woman seemingly got in my way. It was all her fault, and I'm frustrated. Why? Because I hate the feeling of being unimpressive. And I think that's a feeling that we all have, because this desire to be impressive is something that we gain pretty early in life, okay? So there's been so many different moments, my little girl Zeta, who's here today, so many moments in life where I've come downstairs and I hear her saying, "Dad, come in the room." And so I go in the room, and I see this tower made out of magnetiles, all right? One of the best toys for adults that were made for kids, okay? And so I see this tower of magnetiles, and she's like, "Dad, look at this, how amazing is this?" I'm like, "That's incredible. Like, there's no way that thing would come crashing down if I just poked it, right? Like, this is top tier architecture going on." But here's what I know: my little girl already wants to be impressive. And so I think what we have to ask is, if this desire to be impressive is seemingly in all of us, is it completely wrong? Are there some good elements to it? Well, I think we have to ask a couple more questions, like, why do you want to be impressive? Who are you trying to be impressive for? And when I say impressive, I mean that you want to shine, you want to stand out in the crowd. How does who we are trying to impress change what we find to be impressive? And if that's true, what do we need to know this morning in order to change who we're trying to be impressive towards? That's what I want to walk through in Isaiah 66 this morning. But before getting into 66, I want to go all the way back to Isaiah 1, okay? We're not going to do a full walkthrough of all these 66 chapters. All right, but bring yourself back to November, Isaiah 1, and I want to read for you just to get an idea of like what was the beginnings of this letter, where were these people at when Isaiah started writing this letter, all these collection of his writings. Let's look at verse 13 and 14. It says, "Stop bringing useless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. New moons and Sabbaths and the calling of solemn assemblies, I cannot stand iniquity with a festival. I hate your new moons and prescribed festivals. They have become a burden to me. I am tired of putting up with them." So he's saying, hey, you have these useless sacrifices. They're pointless. Okay, why are they useless, as Isaiah says here? Well, here's what was happening. As you remember throughout this book, like these Israelites were living in such a way that their heart wanted nothing to do with God. It didn't want to follow God at all, but they'd still put on the show. They'd still go and do the sacrifices so that everyone would look in and say, "Oh yeah, they're following Jesus," but their heart was so far from him. And so these ceremonies would come about of like a new moon or a Sabbath, which was kind of this coming together of everyone at the beginning of the week or the beginning of the month. And as they came back together, they would have these sacrifices to kind of for the sins of that community, but they would also come together to worship. And as they were doing this, as they were taking part in these ceremonies, they would bring their sacrifices as a show, but their heart couldn't be further from God himself, wanting nothing to do with him. So what God does is that he brings judgment upon the people of Israel. They go into exile by the Assyrians and then the Babylonians, but then we're going to fast forward to the moment that they're brought out of exile. The moment that they're freed. And in Isaiah 44, there's this prophecy that Cyrus the Great is going to allow them to rebuild this temple, to rebuild the place where the person of God is going to dwell. The presence of God is going to dwell. And they're going to gather to worship and celebrate and lift up his name. And so that's what's happening. But here's the problem with where the Israelites are at. They are starting to see themselves as impressive again. Like there's a large group of these Israelites that kind of start believing like, man, look at us. And there's a group that's becoming elite in that community and kind of standing out among the rest and trying to draw attention and praise to themselves. And I just want to pause, like how amazing is it that it doesn't matter how impressive our past is, how little it takes for us to feel impressive again, right? Like it takes the smallest good thing that we do to start thinking like, hey, I think I got my life together. I think I've got all this figured out. And so that's what's happening here. The Israelites, a large chunk of these Israelites are beginning to see themselves as impressive. And as they begin to lay out the plans for rebuilding this temple, they have the thought like, we are going to be a part of something great. Like we are going to etch our names in the history books. And we're going to build the most beautiful temple that this world has ever seen. And when people come to this temple, they'll be amazed by us. Like they'll be amazed by our work. Like maybe one day they'll even have a statue of us outside this temple to commemorate what we've done. Like there's this posture in their heart. Like we are going to accomplish something amazing and the world will be in awe of us. The building of the temple was a platform for elevating how impressive they were and everyone to know about it. But this posture isn't just unique to just this group of people, right? Like we've seen this throughout history. Even Jesus' own brothers wanted him to kind of ascribe to a similar idea. So if we look at John 7, what's happening is that the Festival of Shelters is going on, okay? So I don't need to get into detail about that, but it's essentially a gathering of a lot of the people. A lot of the Jewish people are gathering in one place. And Jesus doesn't want to go there because the Jewish people are currently trying to kill him. So that seems like a good thing to avoid, right? So he's trying to avoid, but the brothers are like, no, Jesus, we need to go where the people are. And so in John 7, verse 3, it says this, so his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea so that your disciples can see your works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he's seeking public recognition. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers believed in him. Here's what the brothers of Jesus are telling Jesus. And just remember, as they're giving him advice, remember that they're talking to God, okay? So they're talking to their brother, and they're saying, Jesus, no. Why would you want to go to the secret place? Like, you need to go where the people are. You need to get recognized for your ministry. If we want to grow this thing, we need to get eyes in on this thing. You don't go to the secret place if you're trying to grow your ministry. And so we need to go to Judea. And this carries on into our world today as well. So many people, including in temptation in our own heart, wanting to build a name for ourselves, to be found as exceptional, accomplished, impressive. Where do you find yourself wanting to be impressive? And I'm not just saying like skill or work ethic or doing a good job. What I mean by this desire to be impressive is that you want to be great at something and you want other people to notice it. Like maybe it's in your parenting. There's so many different accounts online telling you how you need to parent, just filling your mind with worry, but there's this desire to be great. Maybe it's in your health and how you minister to people. Maybe it's in your career. Like, where do you desire to be impressive? I love what A.W. Tozer says in his book, The Pursuit of God. He says, only an evil desire to shine wants us to appear other than we are. So where are you trying to appear other than you are? Where has the pursuit of God turned into leveraging God for your own sake? For the own plan that you have for your life? So as these Israelites are about to build this exceptional temple that God is just going to have to thank them for. You know, it's going to have to send a thank you note to them for how amazing this temple is. We have to ask, how is God going to respond? That brings us to the first verse of Isaiah 66 that says this. This is what the Lord says. Heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. Where could you possibly build a house for me, and where could my resting place be? My hand made all these things, and so they all came into being. He's saying, hey, I want you to imagine all of heaven. How far it expands, how massive it is in your mind. That's a picture of the seat that God sits on. And then imagine all of earth, like how grand it is, how much of it you haven't seen, the depths of the ocean that you haven't beholden. Like, that is his footstool. That's where he rests his feet. And so as we picture this stunning temple that they're about to kind of write in the history books as they build this thing, it got me thinking about like all the greatest acts of architecture that have ever happened. Okay, so even just the ones that I've seen. I did a summer mission trip in Istanbul throughout college where I got to see the Hagia Sophia, kind of the center of the Christian world at one time. This past November, I went to Zambia with Jeff Dodge, and we had our plane get delayed in Paris. Bummer, so then we trained in to see Notre Dame, like this stunning building, seeing it rebuilt in all of its glory. And as we think about this temple, as we think about all these buildings, these structures are almost a symbol of the advancement of the skills of humanity, showing off how impressive humans can be. But as we look at the temple that's about to be built, and as we look at all the structures throughout history, God's saying, all you are doing is just prettying up my footstool. All of the greatest advancements, all of the greatest accomplishments is just giving me a place to rest my feet. Now, I want to say this isn't God like being distant from us, just putting his feet up and this kind of picture, but Isaiah wants to show you the majesty of the God that we're talking about. Who he is, this one who has heaven as a throne, has earth as a footstool. And so then he goes on to say, if those two things are true, how do you think you're going to build a house that's fit for me? How do you actually think you're going to build a resting place that's fitting for the one who's on the throne? He's essentially looking down at humanity, and he's just like, hey, you're playing with magnet tiles down there, all right? Like, I made these for you. I gave them to you for you to have fun and to explore and to build, not to build a name for yourself. Everything that you're using, I spoke into out of nothing. I created everything that you have made, and so everything is meant to give him the glory. Isaiah is clear that what we find to be impressive shifts the moment we step into the presence of God, the moment we behold him on the throne. Okay, but it's clear in this text what the world might find to be impressive, and it's clear to us, like if we're honest, at times what we find to be impressive and how we want to be impressive, but what does God find to be impressive? That's what we have to ask next. Okay, so let's go on in verse 2, continuing on to the second half that says this, I will look favorably on this kind of person. This is who I'm impressed by. One who is humble, submissive in spirit, and trembles at my word. The beauty of this text is that we get to see that God doesn't care about your religious show. He doesn't care about the acts that you put on for everyone else to see. He cares about your heart. He cares about what you're worshiping, not what you're looking like or trying to put on that you're worshiping. And so he gets right to the heart, and he just asks the question, are you humble? Do you have an accurate representation in your heart and mind just how unimpressive you are? How unimpressive all of us are? Do you feel the weight of your sin? Or do you find yourself just pointing out the sin in everyone else's life? Filling up your mind with all the brokenness that you see in the news that you kind of miss out on the plank that's in your own eye? How about when people call out sin in your life, how do you respond? Like, that takes some courage for someone to call out sin in your life. They've probably thought about that for weeks before doing it. Some people don't think at all, but some people have been thinking about it. It takes some courage. Like, how do you respond? Do you get defensive? Do you blame it on someone else? Do you make that person feel guilty? Like, how do you respond? Or do you say, thank you? I was blind to that. Thank you for pointing that out in my heart. And to be honest, that's not even the half of it. Like, the problem is so much worse than that. This is not some sort of beat ourselves up mentality, but it's just trying to gain an accurate understanding of who we are before God. Like, what room do we have to look down on others? What pedestal do we have to stand upon? And how could we ever walk around with this constant posture of I told you so in the presence of a God that's on the throne? That's what Isaiah wants us to feel. Are you humbled as you stare at the face of the one truly impressive person? Are you submissive in spirit? Do you realize that God's ways are higher than your ways, that God's thoughts are higher than your thoughts? Do you realize that He's the authority of your life, not you? That you're submitting to His ways. And are you okay with that? Like, do you find yourself challenging the things of God more or surrendering to the things of God? Not that we cannot doubt and wrestle, but we also have to check our posture to make sure we're not stepping into that ring thinking we're a contender in that fight. And we need to realize who we're going up against with that wrestling. Like a horse that is broken in by a bit in its mouth controlled by the rider, we as well are broken in by being led by the Spirit in our life. Even if we don't understand, we trust Him because we know who He is and we know who we are. Lastly, do you tremble at His word? Like, do you realize that when you sit under this is not just another voice in the room, this is the authority over the room? And as you read these words, like, God's truth that is found in Scripture is not up for debate. People do it a lot, but it's not up for debate. I love what R.C. Sproul says. When God says something, the argument is over. Like, as we approach the Word, let's have that same type of humility and let's understand the weight and the gravity of the one saying these words. This isn't something for you to master, to look impressive with. This is something for you to be in awe of, that would stir worship, that would direct you elsewhere to find the impressive one. And I just want to say, like, if you have fallen off on your reading plans, if the Old Testament kind of bored you out a little bit, like, today is a great morning to start back up. Today is a great day to restart. To just say, I'm going to come back tomorrow, I'm going to come back today and continue to open this word with the goal of being in awe of God, the goal of worshiping Him. You see, when Jesus' brothers were saying to Him, why would you want to go to the secret place? Why don't you go where you are recognized? What Isaiah is saying is that God cares about who you are in the secret place. Who are you in the secret place? Like, when eyes aren't on you and when your faith has no opportunity to be praised by people, to go viral in any way. And what if, when you thought about the secret places in your life, what if sin wasn't the first thing that came to mind? Because it's usually those moments for me where it's like in those secret moments when no one's watching, where I kind of lose the filter and I let my heart go. But what if, instead of that being what defines our secret place, actually the secret place was the most intimate moments we had with God, where we just ran to those moments because we wanted to know Him, we wanted to be with Him. We wanted to treasure and to delight in Him. Then we have to ask, in the secret place, where it's only God that's recognizing what you are doing, is that enough for us? Because what is impressive by God, what we see in this, is that God is impressed by those who realize that they're unimpressive. Because unimpressive people come to him. So this past week, as it's starting to get nice out, we've been out in the kind of doing a garage clean out, which is just an unending, we don't get anywhere, but we do it still. And the girls are riding their bikes out front, okay? And so Zeta's riding around on her two-wheeler, Hattie's trying to learn the pedal bike with the training wheels, okay? And she is getting frustrated, but she has this mentality, I'm gonna figure this out, okay? So she keeps getting frustrated, which then turns into her just screaming as loud as she can. So I go up there, I'm like, Hattie, can I help you? And she's just like, no, I can do it. And I just sit back, I hear some more screaming, I'm like, Hattie, any help? You want help now? You good? And she's like, I can do it. But then the moment happens where she keeps trying, and I just hear this quiet voice that she says, Dad, can you help me? And so I get over, and she invites me in on it, and I begin pushing her as she begins learning how to pedal these pedals that she's never tried before. Here's what we need to see. You don't invite God into the equation by figuring it out all on your own, by showcasing how you are impressive enough, because what we're really trying to show is I'm impressive enough to not need God. No, you invite God into the equation when you realize you are unimpressive on your own, that you need him. Where have you been fighting to walk this Christian life so hard on your own that you've been keeping God out of the equation? And where do you need to invite God back into the mess of your life? And where do you need to remember that you are unimpressive? You can't do it on your own. And if you're just visiting and you've been trying to figure out what following God's like and you're trying to get to the point where you're impressive enough, I just want to say, stop. You can't do it. What we realize is that the unimpressive ones are those that realize Jesus is the only impressive one in the room. But here's what's true. There will be a significant challenge for you right now in this life when you begin to honestly admit that I'm unimpressive. Here's what's going to be a challenge. It's going to look like the impressive people are winning. Like there's a group of people who are truly humble in this passage. God speaks to them in verse 5, we're about to see, that are trembling at the word, that see themselves as not a big deal, but they're looking out at those who are presenting themselves as impressive, stepping on a pedestal, gaining a following, and getting the applause. And in their mind, in that moment, they're like, it looks like they're winning. God, how could you be letting this happen? And to add to that, these people who see themselves as impressive, trying to gain a following for themselves, are using the name of the Lord to tear down the truly humble people. So I want you to look now to 66 verse 5 that says this, you who tremble at his word, hear the word of the Lord. So he's speaking to those who are trembling at the word. He says this, your brothers who hate and exclude you for my name's sake have said, let the Lord be glorified so that we can see your joy. So here's what's happening in this passage. The impressive ones are using their platform to push out and to kind of rally everyone up to hate the people who are truly humble. Because their ways of life couldn't be more opposite of one another, right? So they're trying to push them out, and they're even using biblical language to do it. They're like, hey, we're doing this for your name's sake, God. Let God be glorified through this act. Would he be worshiped by us pushing these people out? They're being celebrated. It even says in this passage that they're delighting in their sin. They're loving their way of life, even though they're rebelling against God. They're pushing these people out in every way. It looks like they are winning and the humble are losing. And it's in moments like these where when we admit that we are unimpressive, when we pursue that life of humility in the face of God, that we can begin to ask, like, am I the dumb one here? Like, am I missing something? Do they have something figured out? Are they more brilliant than me, like that I can't pick up on? And we can see this today. People who are building their own name under a mask of doing things for God. People who are using the same strategies and methods of the world, but they're just putting a different cause at the top. And a lot of times they get it. They get the crowds. They get the platform. They get the applause. And it's in these moments where we wrestle with, like, why does it feel like they're winning? Why are they getting away with this, God? Like, I feel like I see so many sinful motives going on in this picture. Like, why aren't they experiencing judgment for what they're doing? How are they getting away with this? Well, God's response through Isaiah is that he wants to remind people, hey, I see it all, and I'm going to sort it all out. Okay, so let's look back at verse 3. I'm just going to read the first 2 lines of this, but it's an interesting passage where he gives this list throughout all of verse 3, but he's trying to communicate the same thing. So I want to read the first 2 of these. It says, one person slaughters an ox, and another kills a person. One person sacrifices a lamb, another breaks a dog's neck. And so he keeps giving these 2 different categories. One of them, say slaughtering an ox, looks like a religious action of sacrifice. Okay? The other one, killing a person, a wicked action. Like, we can all agree that's not great. Okay? So he's giving these 2 different categories, and he keeps placing up a seemingly religious action against a wicked action. So what is God trying to do here? God is saying, hey, I see their religious acts that are done from a completely wicked heart. And so when I list those 2 things next to each other, here's what I'm saying. Tomato, tomato. Basically the same thing. And we wrestle with, like, hey, how does killing an axe equal killing someone? Like, that doesn't seem like they are in the same category at all. But what God is trying to show us, he's like, hey, I see all the sin of the world, and it's even worse than you can picture. Like, the wickedness that's in their heart as they put on a show with these sacrifices, like, I see the true depths of that evil. Like, it's all evil in my mind. So he's saying, hey, there is no mask that gets past me, no unseen thought or motive that can escape me, and I see it all, and I will sort it all out to the full. So he's saying, I see it, but next he's going to say, I'm going to sort it out. So let's look at verse 16 of Isaiah 66. That says this, for the Lord will execute judgment on all humanity with his fiery sword, and many will be slain by the Lord. Right there in that verse, God is trying to remind people that, hey, I'm going to sort it all out in the end, and therefore you don't have to. All of your wrestling of, like, man, how can they feel the weight of what they've done? You don't need to be the one that brings that about. You don't need to be the one that wrestles with how is that going to happen. God's saying, I'm going to sort it all out. Even if it feels right now like we're losing and they're winning. God wants to remind us of what's going to happen in the end. Because here's what's true. We are currently following the one whose sole purpose of coming to this world was to lose his life. And so I think in this world, it might feel like we're losing a lot of the time. Like, think about it this way. Jesus came and put on flesh so that he could become killable. Like, humanity couldn't touch Jesus on his throne, and so he had to put on flesh so that humanity had something to pierce. In this Palm Sunday, as we think about Jesus entering into Jerusalem, he realized he's not going there for a crown to be praised. He's going there for a crown of thorns to be mocked. Jesus became the sacrificial lamb that takes on himself the judgment of God and becomes slain so that those who follow him don't have to themselves. And so God is saying in this passage, hey, judgment will be played out for every sin of every human for all of time. Nothing's getting past him, okay? Nothing's sneaking by in the secret place. Like, he sees it all. The sin in your life will also experience the wrath of God. And there's two tracks that could be experienced. It could be experienced on you one day in judgment, or it has already been experienced at the cross. I think a lot of times we look at the Old Testament, we see this like angry God. When we get to the New Testament, we see like a more joyful God. But actually what's happening in the New Testament is that all of his wrath and judgment is directed on one person. It's directed on Jesus. And so the cross is the one place where you are able to go and be unimpressive, and it works out for you. Because as you come to the cross and you realize all the brokenness and sin and shame in your life, and you come before him, there is no way for you to be impressive at that point. But you look up at Jesus on the cross and you see just how impressive he is, that though he was perfect, he was willing to die for you. All sin will be judged. No sin can slip into the kingdom. And so this picture of God's judgment might be a shocking picture to us, but he's trying to show us the place that he's preparing. All right, like he's trying to show us that he's preparing a place for us to worship him for all of eternity, where there will be no wickedness at all. That he is going to remove all impurities so that it can become pure. Okay, I think of it like this. So I am, you could say, a coffee lover. Okay, anyone else? Coffee lovers in here? Wow, okay. It's about 20 of you. That's fine. So I love coffee, and I'm one Saturday morning, I make my pour over, and I'm sitting at the coffee counter with my coffee mug, okay? And then all of a sudden I hear from the bathroom the cry that I hear often, which is just, "I'm done," okay? So Zeta, this is a while back, she lets me know that she's done. So I bring my coffee mug in there, I set this mug on the ground, and I go to her little potty that she has, and I'm transferring her pee to the big potty, but on the way, a little drop falls right in my coffee mug. I don't know how you like your coffee, but I'm not drinking it, okay? Like, there's no amount of cream and sugar that can help that. Like, if I go to you and I give you a mug and I say, "Hey, this is mostly coffee," flags are coming up. Like, "Hey, what else?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you don't want to know that. It's mostly coffee, though." Like, just because there's a little bit of that in the coffee doesn't make that coffee mostly good. It makes it undrinkable. Here's what God's saying. Hey, a little bit of sin in heaven doesn't make heaven mostly good. It makes it completely corrupt. So here's what needs to happen. I need to bring my judgment on every sin, all wickedness, and to remove it so I could create the place that I am preparing for you. What is that place? Let's look at verse 22. It says this: "For just as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make will remain before me," this is the Lord's declaration, "so your offspring and your name will remain. All humanity will come to worship me from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, says the Lord. As they leave," this is the rest of it. I don't have the words on the screen for this, but "as they leave, they will see the dead bodies of those who have rebelled against me. For their worm will never die, and their fire will never go out, and they will be a horror to all humanity." Happy ending to his book, you know? But here's what he's trying to say as he gives this haunting picture of what's going to happen as people walk by. They're kind of being ushered into this new reality. And I want you to notice, do you see how Isaiah is bookending this book? So at the beginning of this, in Isaiah 1, he says, hey, your new moons, your Sabbaths that you are kind of doing with your wicked heart, like I don't want anything to do with that. But here's the type of place that he's preparing. It says from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another. So here's what he's saying. Hey, I'm going to continue to bring you all together in fellowship and worship of me, but the wickedness is going to be removed. The ceremonies weren't the problem. Like, it was the sinful heart, but now the sin's going to be removed so you can treat the ceremonies like they were meant to be treated. You can gather, you can worship, you can celebrate King Jesus for all of eternity. You won't have to do the sacrifices anymore because Jesus already did that for you, but you can delight in God together as a community. I will bring things back to the way things were meant to be. Everything will be back in that heart that is centered on worship. There won't be any hurried spirits, any distracted minds from how busy your week is, but we will all come together for all of eternity over and over and over to worship King Jesus. And so if that is the great reward that we are going to experience one day, like if that's the place that we are going to be ushered into for all of eternity where worship is made right, here's what we need to fight for. How do we fight to live in that reality now? Because Veritas Church, I think this letter is meant to give a call to you as a church family. Like, may this church never be consumed with making the name of Veritas great. Because you realize that when we gather in Blades Chapel, like, we are all remembering that we are unimpressive, and there's only one impressive one in the room. That each and every week we come together to worship Jesus, no other name. There's no other name that stands up to his name. And so would we, as a church, remember that he's the one that's meant to be praised? May you be careful about everything that you're passionate about that's not Christ. Because it's those things that you're passionate about that have the opportunity to look like Jesus is still on the throne, but actually to take his place. May you care more about the sin in your own heart than the evil in all the world, and may you continue to realize as a church body that Jesus is the one to be praised, because that is where we're going for all of eternity. So why would we not start living in that now? That all worship, all praise, the only one on the pedestal is King Jesus, the one who every knee will bow before and every tongue confess that he is Lord. So let's join in doing that this morning. Let me pray. Jesus, we come before you, humbled by your presence. Jesus, help us to kind of remove distractions, and will we just set our eyes on you on the throne this morning? Remembering you and your majesty, and as we stare into your face and as we think about Jesus on the cross, would we ourselves be humbled and remember that, no, Jesus, you deserve the attention. Like, you must increase, I must decrease. And God, would we continue to live in that reality? Would Veritas Church continue to live in such a way that it doesn't matter? There's no bandwagon to this church. There's no hype train to this church. Like, it is all about your name continuing on, even if the name of Veritas is long forgotten, because that is the only name, King Jesus, your name, that we'll be celebrating for all of eternity. And so, Jesus, I pray that we would stop in our hearts trying to be impressive enough for you, but whether we've been following Jesus or not, would we come to the cross right now, see you hanging up on that cross, beaten and broken for us, and we would be amazed by what you did. Would we realize how unimpressive we are, and would we just say, Jesus, you're Lord, you're Savior, I surrender everything to you. I'm following your ways, not mine. I'm lifting up your name, not mine. And as we worship now, would we lift up our voices because you are worthy of our praise. Amen.